Hello, everyone. My name's Linnell Smith, and I am currently on Indigenous Jicarilla Apache land here in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I listen with my heart. I immediately put that down. Pretty much all my life, I've been told I was a good listener, and I just let people share, and I feel it with them a lot. So that's kind of just has always been my thing. And so a lot has come up for me with the prompt and plus hearing the beautiful stories. But I guess sharing a story where listening profoundly changed my life. I feel like I've been doing this all my life, and every story I hear impacts me in one way or another. And I'm sorry, for some reason, I'm like very emotional. And what came to me immediately was my grandmother. She was a Diné woman, and she told stories of her childhood. And she told me when she was really young, when I was really young. And I didn't realize the impact at that moment when she shared stories. She passed away about 12 years ago. She lived to be about 104. And she wasn't quite sure how old she was, though, and that's just what the government assigned to her, was her age. And I guess a lot has been on my mind with that because of the uncovering of children in the Canadian residential schools. And my grandmother was a product of a boarding school here in the States. And she shared stories of what that was like, being a young child, like 6 or 7, and being taken from her mother and put in a school where she couldn't speak her language, and she had to dress the way they dressed her, being punished and abused. And I remember parts of her telling me that when I was really young, but I didn't realize how horrible that was at that time because I was a child myself. But I have children, I have grandchildren, and I can imagine the pain of having them go through that. And today's my mom's birthday. And so I went back to the res and picked her up and drove her in this morning to celebrate here, take her out to a nice dinner. And she was talking about my grandmother on the drive. And she talked about her childhood. And I think it was our first storyteller talked about what I call cultural trauma, what we carry from our ancestors. We carry that forward because it's in our DNA. It's a part of us. And we carry the hurts and things like that. But we can also like improve our lives from that. And I think that's why my grandmother shared. She wanted better for my mother, and she wanted better for her children. And my mom's always done better for us. And I've carried that to my children. And I watched my eldest daughter with her 2 children. And I think those storytellings, carrying on of traditions, culture, language, was all through listening. Even the hurt and the trauma is all through listening. And lots of other stuff came up. And I was thinking, like, when we sit in ceremony, you sit in prayer, you're told by your elders, you have to be quiet, you listen. You don't move around, you don't play. You just sit there. And you wait for the stories, you wait for the holy people to talk to you and give you wisdom and guidance. And that's what my grandmother did. She's a holy person now. And when I pray and when I sit in silence, I ask her for her wisdom and her strength to live to be 104 in such horrible conditions as a child. She's strength. And so I will continue storytelling. I will continue passing on the good and the hardship that she endured for us. And I want to thank you for giving me this opportunity to share. It brought up a lot for me, but I'm thankful for that. Thank you.
Palya, my name's Janara Goring Goring. I'm a Waka Waka Woolly Woolly woman of the Jalan Nation from central Queensland in Australia. And I currently live on the land of the Ngunnawal and the Ngambri people, and capital Canberra. The country that is commonly called Australia is known as Nunjunatia to us, which means our mother. I listen with my soul, my spirit, my Kurumpa. One of the enduring traditions in our culture is called Dadiri, deep listening. And so I'm going to read what Dadiri is. This was given to us by an elder from Arnhem Land, who is now currently the Senior Australian of the Year. Her name is Dr. Miriam Rose Ungermer. So she explains what deep listening is in all the First Nations traditions of Australia. And after I read it, I'll just quietly tell you why it's so important. Dadiri is a special quality, a unique gift of the Aboriginal people. It is inner deep listening and quiet still awareness. Dadiri recognises the deep spring that is inside of us. It is something like what you call contemplation. The contemplative way of Dadiri spreads over our whole life. It renews us and brings us peace. It makes us feel whole again. In our Aboriginal way, we learned to listen from our earliest times. We could not live good and useful lives unless we listened. We are not threatened by silence. We are completely at home in it. Our Aboriginal way has taught us to be still and to wait. We do not try to hurry things up. We let them follow their natural course like the seasons. We watch the moon in each of its phases. We wait for the rain to fill our rivers and water the thirsty earth. When twilight comes, we prepare for the night. At dawn, we rise with the sun. We watch the bush foods and wait for them to open before we gather them. We wait for our young people as they grow, stage by stage, through their initiation ceremonies. When a relation dies, we wait for a long time with the sorrow. We own our grief and allow it to heal slowly. We wait for the right time for our ceremonies and our meetings. The right people must be present and careful preparations must be made. We don't mind waiting because we want things to be done with care. Sometimes many hours will be spent on painting the body before an important ceremony. We don't worry. We know that in time and in the spirit of Dadiri, the deep listening and quiet stillness, that the way will be made clear. We are like a tree standing in the middle of a bushfire, sweeping through the timber. The leaves are scorched and the tough bark is scarred and burned, but inside the tree, the sap is still flowing, and under the ground, the roots are still strong. Like that tree, we have endured the flames and we still have the power to be reborn. Our people are used to the struggle and the long waiting. We still wait for the white people to understand us better. We ourselves have spent many years learning about the white man's ways, and we have learned to speak the white man's language, and we have listened to what they had to say. This learning and the listening should go both ways, and we would like people in Australia to take the time to listen deeply to us. We are hoping that people will come closer. We keep longing for the things that we have always hoped for, respect and understanding. We know that our white brothers and sisters carry their own particular burdens. We believe that if they let us come to them, if they open their minds and their hearts to us, we may lighten their burdens. There is a struggle for us, but we have not lost our sense of the deity, the deep listening. There are deep springs within each of us, and within these deep springs, which is the very spirit, is a sound, the sound of the deep calling to the deep. The time for rebirth is now. If our culture is alive and strong and respected, it will grow. It will not die, and our spirit will not die. I believe the spirit of Dadiri that we have to offer will blossom and grow, not just within ourselves, but also in the whole nation. Lanka Gururka, Elder Miriam Rose Ungamer, the Aboriginal gift, spirituality for a nation. I was taught Dadiri as a very young child. It's one of the things that children are taught very early. In fact, we say that it's our first language, that our language is silence because we listen with the soul, not just with the human ears or the heart. And so we are taught to listen to the voices of the ancestors on the wind because it's there that we hear the wisdom of our elders and those who have left and those who may already be around us and with us and in our hearts. There have been many times in my life when I have learned to listen deeply, and there are too many to say today, but being given Dadiri was a very special thing that occurred in the 1980s during the bicentennial year here in Australia, when white people were celebrating 200 years of colonisation of Australia and Aboriginal people were mourning. This elder gave this gift to the nation, and she's now become our Senior Australian of the Year, which is quite significant because, you know, Australia is still a difficult place to live if you're Black, although things have changed greatly in my lifetime. So when I was 21, my grandparents had passed away, and so one cannot do any of the older ceremonies without your grandparents. So I was adopted by a senior elder of the Anangu, Pitnanjara, Yunkadajara clan of Central Australia, where Uluru, the big red rock, is. It's a very quiet and still place. And in fact, it's a place in the world where you can be very still and silent and never really have to do anything because you hear everything in the silence. And it was there, going there for the last 42 years and being with those people and going through my ceremonies as an older woman, as a young woman and then an older woman, where I learned to listen deeply to the inner self, but to also listen deeply to everybody else's inner self, to such a degree that when I walk along the street, I can hear what is in people's minds and I can hear and feel their feelings. And that's a gift that's been given to me from the teachings of learning how to do Dadiri in a very deep way. And our language is a language of intuition. So when my grandmother speaks to me, she doesn't talk. She sends a signal from the soul and I pick it up. And so you can pick that up anywhere in the world. And often, you know, she'll send one and it's like get on a plane and come home to Uluru right now. And then I have to. So I also did my PhD with them, my second adopted Aboriginal family, and spent 11 years listening very deeply to all the important things about them and how they grow into sacred leadership. And so for me, really, I've learned everything in my life from just being silent. And, you know, later on in my life, I picked up a form of Eastern meditation from India, which is taught by women, which is to keep your eyes open and just listen in silence. And it's a very, it's a bit like Dadiri, it's a very magical form of yoga. And so the two things make me a very strong person in that sense, you know, in that inner sense. And so I've managed to face many things in the life, as we all have faced many things, but I've faced, you know, the idea that I might go to jail, you know, that the government raided my house. You know, I was nearly convicted of leaking confidential information when I was a high-level public servant. You know, I've had to put priests in jail for abuse. I've had to face all sorts of drama in various aspects of my life, and practicing Dadiri has really helped me just be okay with whatever comes, you know. And now that I'm in my 60s, it's like I don't really mind what happens anymore. I'm just very happy to be here and to have learned the wisdom of my elders and the wisdom of my culture, and also the wisdom of, you know, Western culture. There's many things I learned from that, which has been pretty special. And you know, I'm just a really happy person. So deep listening has been very good for me. And, you know, it's helped me deal with sorrow and suffering. And it's helped me now become the type of older person who is a guide for the younger people in our clans, because that's what we do when we get older. You know, we share all the things that have happened in our lives, so that, and we have to act a certain way so that the younger generation knows that that's how you act. And so I'm very mindful that everything that I do, say, think, and be in the world, other people are watching me, and it's very important to be true to the self.
A couple things that are staying with me are the idea of enemy is human-made, and it's the deep calling to the deep, the inner sense, and also hearing that word as innocence.
A long trajectory of listening in multiple forms.
I love you so, 'cause you help me see, to see you in all is to see you in me. I'm in you and you're in me. I'm in you and you're in me. We're all into each other.
I feel affirmed in my waiting. And I now have a name for it, Dadiri. Waiting in silence, waiting for the time and the information, the understanding. Thank you for everyone.
Keep your eyes open and listen in silence.
I listen to the air.
We tell our story to stay alive, to keep our traditions alive.
It's improv starts with silence. We don't mind waiting because we want things done with care.
Deep listening, try not to hurry things up, let it flow.
Silence is a language. Being still is a movement. And listening to the ability of others can illuminate our own abilities in ways that we could never imagine.
I heard someone say a chronic sense of alienation.
explain this song is a sacred song. We don't know when it was created, but we know it was thousands of years ago because it's been passed on by the women in our clans. And this is a song that tells the story of when people were on the earth were not following the law of Kanyini, which is the law of harmony, Napaji, giving and receiving and sharing and caring, and other laws that the animals and the land are asked by Ami God to take care of it and do something about it. And so he sent the rain to wash away all the negativity on the earth and the disharmony. And after the rain finished, and there's a great storm going on here, lived under the law, and the animals and the land was happy again. And that this is the story of the cycle of our lives. And so I ask you to close your eyes in honor and respect of the women that wrote it thousands of years ago and passed it on down through the women of our clans. And I give it to you today because it's a healing medicine song, and it has the ability to heal anything that you want to let go of. Kapina tinjua kun beina unula kuna tamina Oh, Apalia, I'm finished, thank you. And because the song is recorded now, it will play over and over all over the world and hopefully have an impact.